Welcome back to Mean Streets, a podcast where we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir. I am Luke Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth.
And we are your cinematic sleuths, and we are about to crack another case. Matt, what do we have for the people today? What's the investigation?
Today we're taking a long, hard look at 1984's Blood Simple, starring John Getz, Frances McDormand, Dan Hedaya, and M Emmet Walsh. Written and directed by the Coen Brothers, Joel and Ethan. And the IMDb logline is: the owner of a seedy small-town Texas bar discovers that one of his employees is having an affair with his wife. A chaotic chain of misunderstandings, lies, and mischief ensues after he devises a plot to have them murdered.
There we go.
There we go. The Coen's first film.
It is. But I think we need. I want to shout out at the beginning of this. This film has what I'm going to call a Mean Streets regular in it. In one of the actors, Dan Hedaya.
I was going to get onto that. Yeah, I was going to mention that later.
Like so many times. Like I'm trying to remember what they all were. He was in an episode of Fallen Angels. He was in Mulholland Drive. What else was he in?
Well, those are the two that came to my mind when I saw his name in the credits.
Yes. He is.
I think that might be. He might be in a couple that we've sort of got as films to cover in future. But those are the two that stuck in my mind when when I saw the credits. So because he was in the Fallen Angels episode that we covered recently,
a while ago. Stroke while ago, depending on
which way you look at it. And yeah, definitely Mulholland Drive. Drive.
Yes, and of course I know him very well from Cheers. He's every time I'm like, oh my god, it's Carla's husband. This is what he's doing when he's not at Cheers.
I keep forgetting that he was in Cheers. Yeah. And he's always worth watching. I think Dan Hedaya. He's always one of those actors that's dependable. He's great in this. Yeah, he's great in this.
Yes. And I mean, I love his filmography. I mean, he's in so many good things. Benny and June. I forgot that he was in Benny and June. I love that film. It's been so long since I've seen that, but he's in Benny and June.
I've seen that as well.
The Usual Suspects.
Yeah, he is in The Usual Suspects. He's in Nixon.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, he's one of those actors that he's like, my dad used to say this about Denham Elliott. He's one of those actors who's in everything but never quite the lead.
I know the other thing is we haven't covered it yet. He was in Shaft 2000 with Samuel Jackson.
Yeah.
Because I recently watched that. That's the other thing. I'm like, no, he's in something else. Yes, he's in Shaft. Fudge, yeah.
And he's one of those actors who, like, through the 80s and 90s, he was in loads of stuff like all the sort of Usual Suspects, as it were, like The Equalizer and LA Law and NYPD Blue, things like that all these actors sort of turned up in guest roles in.
Yes. And of course, I mean, we're already just going to get into it, but the first thing that I noticed when the film started, because I was like, oh my god, that's the guy from Blade Runner. I know that voice.
Yeah.
I need the old Blade Runner back. I need Rick Deckard. I was like, oh my god.
Well, that's M Emmet Walsh, isn't it?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I know that voice.
He's great in this as well.
Yes, yeah, he is something. We have a patron question about him, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Later on. But yeah, what are your initial thoughts on Blood Simple? Because this is the first time I've seen it, so I went in knowing almost nothing. I like that. I like when I come across a film that I'm like, oh, I've not seen this one. This is going to be a nice, fresh experience for me.
Yeah, I don't think I'd seen it before. I thought I had, but when it got going, I thought I don't remember this really. But there's a scene at the end which very often crops up on, these polls that various people like MTV do, the 100 scariest moments or the 100 best moments in thrillers or whatever.
Yeah,
and there's a scene which we'll come on to that often appears in that. So that I knew. But
maybe we should say the scene just in case we forget and don't actually say.
Right. Well, it's the climax. It's when the private eyes trying to break into the apartment.
Okay, right, yeah. I think we'll
kill her.
remember that. We'll remember that.
Yeah,
we'll remember
well,
that. Yes.
I wasn't going to forget it. It's a famous scene, and but I don't know. I found it oddly entertaining.
Mm,
You know, there wasn't a minute when I thought this is dull. I don't think it's it's obviously not as polished as their later stuff, like
yeah,
Miller's Crossing and all things like that. But
yeah,
I thought it was a good starting point for the career they've had.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I thought it was really good. It was certainly it was a bit chaotic, perhaps, but
Mm,
I thought there was some really good and tense moments throughout it.
yes, yes.
But I did sort of end up thinking, I'm not really sure. I have to go away and think about how I really felt about that. I had that sort of reaction to it because I didn't instantly say this is a classic, but I didn't instantly say, God, this is awful either. And
No,
there were sort of things to say, I just want to think about that a bit more and let it digest over the course of the rest of the day. Which I don't mean that as a criticism. I like films that make you do that. I like films that make you go away and think about them. Very much so. So, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
I did
you?
too. Yeah, I did too. I mean, obviously, I went in with little expectation, and I was absolutely thrilled that the film was an hour and a half. That was wonderful. I was like, "Oh my god, great! This is an hour and 30 minutes. This isn't 2 hour and 50-minute movie. This is great." So that was already a relief, and I honestly just kind of from the first shot, I was kind of hooked on the conversation. I was invested in what was who these people were. I mean, that initial conversation between Ray and Abby of, she's leaving her husband and he's like, "Well, I've told you I liked you," and he says it like a number of times in this scene. As they're driving in the almost in the rain that you can barely see through. But I was there was intrigue from the very beginning. I think there good dialogue, but a lot of pausing and contemplation, and it really reminded me of. I was thinking, did Drive take any inspiration from some of this? Because that's another one where there's a lot of just sort of looking back and forth without saying a lot, little bits of dialogue with lots of contemplative glances and stares and things.
Yeah, exactly. I had a similar feeling, and it's one of those films. I always like films that just throw you straight in. And you've got to keep up, because one of the things that good writing is the characters should never be explaining to themselves what situation they're in, sort of thing. And you've got to keep up and find out what's going on very quickly with this. And I love things like that. I love it when it hits the ground running. I always think it's a very it's a really sort of explosive way to start a film or a book or something like that. There's like one of my favorite openings to any novel is a horror novel by Adam Neville, British writer, and it's called The Ritual, and it just starts with, "And on the third day, things got even worse."
Yes.
And you think that you can't resist that, surely.
No.
And this is the sort of cinematic equivalent of that sort of opening sentence to a novel. Straight in, it's just talking about stuff, and it sets up what's going to happen. It sets up the plot very, very economically.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think because you were mentioning that the film felt very chaotic, and I agree. There is chaos, but it's the chaos made sense to me. I understood why things were happening. And one of my big takeaways from it that I enjoyed with it was that every character is it's desperate people doing desperate things, and that is the heart of a good noir or neo-noir. Like, Ray is doing what he's doing because he's desperate for the love of Abby, and the PI is doing what he's doing because he wants money, and Marty is desperate for revenge, and Abby is desperate to get away. And it's so I find, whether it was intentional or just happenstance, because I know we'll mention in a minute, but I know the Coen brothers they're not too kind on this film, but I think maybe they're more harsh on it than they need to be, because I felt that in terms of that element, it felt well done.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I think they are too harsh on it. We'll come on to what they say about it, but I think it is too harsh. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
when I say chaos, there was sort of you're right. They're doing things for reasons, and they are their own reasons. And they always seem to be logical decisions that they make based on the
Yes.
people that they are. Which, I mean,
Yeah.
that's no mean feat at all.
No. No.
But there are sort of you do sometimes. Well, I did anyway. Sometimes thought, well, is this just a series of incidents that sort of strung together rather than a cohesive narrative? But as I say, I came away from it thinking I need to think about that a bit more, about this film a bit more, and I'm not sure it is. That was my initial, as watching it, that was my initial reaction. You know, like, what is the actual story here? Is it just as simple as these two people want to kill these two? Is it just that simple?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, exactly. Once the credits,
I think it is. Yes.
I thought about it. I went, yeah, it is actually. so,
Yes.
which is amazing to get an hour and a half out of that simple setup is really, really impressive. So yeah,
yeah, no, it is.
It seemed
it is
chaotic. I think perhaps I should have said it seemed chaotic. But the more I thought about it afterwards, the more I thought, no, that's just like realistic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's normal people responding to these situations. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
Marty isn't some big grand over the top villain. He's just a bar owner who's a bit who's a sleazy bar owner who's also a bit of a crook. The PI is a sleazy guy who wants who will, for the right price, will do the wrong thing. And then you have Ray and Abby who are just constantly reacting to these two individuals' attempts to do them harm. And that's where the chaos comes from.
That's the chaos. Yeah, exactly.
From that. And I think that is, I think that's what's really well done. And I think it made it feel authentic in terms of like why Ray did what he did, and then how Abby responded. And I think it was, I was happy with this. I thought this was a good ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. That is the chaos. That's exactly, you articulated it better than me, but that is the chaos. That it is just this, well, that attempt at revenge failed, so now I'll do this. That failed, so I'll try this. And you thought, well, if that's just the story, then fair enough. But
yes,
how's that going to last an hour and a half? And then an hour and a half later, I thought, blimey, that was quick.
Yep. No, it moved
flew
quick.
by.
It did. Well, should we go behind the camera, talk about how this film came to be? So this thing cost 101.5 million. Its return was 2.7 mil. So not a big return. It was more of a critical hit than it was a. Oh, we got some sirens in the background, motherfuckers. Anyway, they're gone now. So 2.7 mil, so not a big return, but a big critical response. It had a really positive critical response versus the kind of the general the public didn't rush to the cinema to see this dark and sleazy neo noir by these first time directors, the Coen brothers.
Sleazy is a word that's going to be used a lot in this episode.
I think so. So Joel Coen is labeled as the director, but this film was actually co-directed by the Coen brothers. That's important to point out. And
yeah, it is.
I mean, in terms of their filmography, when I say that I'm a fan of the Coen brothers, I'm not steeped in everything they do. I'm not following everything they do, but I do typically enjoy their films. So Miller's Crossing, Fargo is great, Big Lebowski is great, No Country for Old Gentlemen, like they do really terrific, like neo noir, neo western, down and dirty, hybrid movies that I think is terrific.
Miller's Crossing is an absolutely superb piece of work. I think that's one of my favorites. And and they also did The Man Who Wasn't There, which with Billy Bob Thornton, which it's a long time since I've seen it, but I remember being bowled over by that as well. But like you,
Yeah.
I won't pretend to be a Coen Brothers fan,
Yeah.
because I've by no means seen everything they've done. But what I have seen overall,
Yeah,
is very impressive. Very
they're a
impressive
great
work.
duo. They're a great
Yeah,
duo for
yeah.
sure.
Good writers and good directors.
Yes. So they generally write and direct and produce all of their films. And it wasn't until 2004's The Lady Killers that they were able to have their joint director title. The Directors Guild of America, the regulations meant that they both couldn't be listed as a director. So Joel was the director, and Ethan was the producer
Mhm.
of all their films. But they did write and direct and produce everything together. So it's one of those like really silly rules that the
Yeah.
DGA has that is I don't think it's entirely gone. I think it's still sort of there. But they also share editing credits. But they had to do it under a pseudonym of Roderick Janes.
Roderick Janes. Yeah.
Yeah. Mean Streets will return right after this. Who doesn't love a good boxing movie? Well, Steve Hunt presents the Boxing Movie Podcast. On each episode, Steve and his guests discuss a movie that has boxing as a theme. Do not be put off if you're not a fan of boxing, though. Of course, he covers the likes of Rocky and the sequels, but the depth of boxing-themed movies across cinema history is much greater than you might imagine. Boxing Movie Podcast has covered the early works of Hitchcock, explored the world of blaxploitation cinema and the golden age of film noir, with episodes covering The Setup, Champion, and Stanley Kubrick's Killer's Kiss. You might not have previously considered yourself a boxing movie fan, but after listening to a few episodes of the Boxing Movie Podcast, you may have to reconsider that view. Find the Boxing Movie Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. If you love Mean Streets, join us on Patreon and get exclusive perks, insider access, and a chance to shape the show.
Depending on the tier of your choice, get early episode access, your name in the credits, and have your questions read on air.
You can help us choose films for us to review, unlock exclusive commentaries and reviews, and join our members-only YouTube Live Q&As.
So slip on your trench coats, pull your fedoras down, and join us on Patreon today.
Now, back to the show. But yeah, so they they really are terrific, and I think in terms of their like hybrid nature of their films, they're very much steeped in noir. I think
Very much so. Yeah.
And Blood Simple, I think, exemplifies kind of where their films are going to go, because it's a bit of a western, it's a bit of an erotic thriller, it's a bit of a horror, and then when you see where their films sort of go, they sort of, you can kind of see the roots being planted, and where this comes to fruition, maybe better done in the future with other films, things like Fargo, things like Big Lebowski, whatever.
Yeah. But I
But
mean,
you get the sense that you get the sense that these are all the genres that they're playing with. And I can't remember what episode we were talking about. It might have been Strange Darling. I don't remember. But the thing about noir is it's an undefined genre. There's few things that have been kind of slapped on it, but it is quite undefined. And it really is a casserole of genres, like the main staples are kind of your tarnished knight or your morally ambiguous protagonist, and you typically have a femme fatale, and there's some sort of corruption that is unstoppable, but someone is going to try and stop it on some small level just so they can feel maybe good about themselves, to help a person or something like that. And
or to realize that they're actually not as important as they thought they are. And there's nothing they can do about it. But
and I really think and I think you can when you look at these films and some of their other films, it's this is what's so fun about this. What I find so fun about film noir and neo noir is it is a very like malleable genre, and in the individuals who want to put it into a box are as ignorant as the people who wanted to harshly defined what became golden age fiction and put so many rules and regulations on it that it's,
yeah.
and I just like the fact that the Coens they do noir right. And that is, it is a mixture of all of these different types of genres. And they, I think they nailed the genre in this film.
Yeah, so do I. And I mean, and film noir, as I've always understood it, sort of didn't start out as a genre, because the genre was crime. It started out as a style. It started out as a way of making films that was heavily influenced by the expressionists, the German expressionism. And because most of the films that were made at its heyday were crime and gangsters and private eyes, that became the sort of subgenre then. So if you made a private eye film, it was noir. When even if it wasn't really, sort of thing, and but you're right, now it's sort of taken on other things, and there are a lot of noir films. We discussed some of them where horror is it's a close cousin.
Yes.
To in terms of genre, things like Manhunter. There's a lot of horror elements in that. Well, Lecter himself is a horror figure, and there's some horror in this. The scene that I was talking about before that we'll come back onto is very much as almost a horror, and the nightmare sequence, things like that. So it's become a genre that can take on a lot of things. Certainly the Western, as you say, in this film as well. But going back to what you said about it may not be as polished, or I can't remember your exact words, but as their latest stuff, I agree, and I think that's part of their criticism over it. But this is the first attempt, and all first attempts are a bit ropey, if we're honest, unless you happen to make Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like that.
Yes.
All
that wasn't even Spielberg's first attempt, so he doesn't. That's not even.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. That they're all a bit ropey, aren't they? So.
Yeah.
But the building blocks are there, definitely.
Yeah.
The bricks are there to build the walls that they go on to build, and I think they're in abundance. And what's more, they're there with a lot more style and class than some people who were making films at this time that had a lot more pedigree than these two.
Yes, there is visually. I found this film so fun to look at. The bar is just always great. The interior of the bar, the way the neon lights are shining in those scenes and that dark seediness. It's
beautiful.
Just and even like the weird sort of imagery that I'm like, is this meant to mean something? But like outside of Ray's window, there are these two trees. And the way they goes from night to day, and we look at them, and then they have a sort of similar scene when Abby moves into her apartment and she has two arched windows. That I'm like, this is sort of imitating those trees. I don't know what this means, and I don't think they do either.
No, I don't.
But it's a great visual. It's a great visual.
Absolutely, and I love just little touches, things like the foreshadowing of the broken glass on the floor. We'll come on to all these bits. When she's having the nightmare that then pays off in the climax.
Yes.
And when Dan Hedaya and John Getz are having their first sort of confrontation, and there's is it like an electric fly paper thing to distract flies?
Oh yeah, the crackling fly, the little electric.
It's like a fly repellent thing in it, and it crackles, and I think that's just a really nice visual touch about what is happening between these two men. Beautiful,
yes,
beautiful stuff.
So obviously this is not based off of a book, but there is a book inspiration to this. The title "Blood Simple" is a reference to Dashiell Hammett's The Red Harvest, which he published in 1929. No, so 1929.
Yeah, 29.
In the there's a line in there where the Constantinop says, "This damned Berg's getting me. If I don't get away soon, I'll be going blood simple like the natives." And if you don't know Red Harvest, that is a very nihilistic, bloody, no hope book. It's terrific. It's one of Hammett's best, I think, in terms of its commentary and grittiness, and maybe better than the Maltese Falcon.
I think it probably is better than the Maltese Falcon. I think it probably is. And the Coen brothers obviously love it because Miller's Crossing is pretty much an adaptation of it in it, with a few variations on a theme, but it's pretty much an adaptation of it. So it's clearly a book that they hold in some esteem.
Yes. So now this they had the idea for this film, and they wrote the script. And once they wrote the script, they made a dummy trailer, which I don't know if you saw. I found it online. The dummy trailer that they used to kind of sell this thing, and it's really cool. It has a lot of shots from the film that what will be in the film. So there's the shooting through the wall, almost exactly like it is in the film. There's the man, we don't know who these people are in the trailer. There's the man crawling out of a car and crawling up the road with the headlights beaming on him, and a man dragging the shovel, that kind of stuff. And little splice between like little clips of kind of what the story is meant to be about. And I mean, as a dummy trailer, as a way to sort of whet the appetite of investors, which is what this was for, I thought it was well done. I was like, yeah, you know what? I would see that movie. Like, even now, looking at this trailer that was made in 1982, that is sort of kind of cheap. I was like, no, I can see something here. Like, this is fun. And it's interesting because it was on the advice of Sam Raimi. Who was like,
Bruce Campbell was in it.
Yes, you don't see his face,
no,
but he is one of the people in the trailer.
He
was like, no, do this, go door to door, you'll get your investors. And
it's a great idea.
Yeah, they raised a good amount of money for it. I don't know if this would work today. I feel like it could possibly work today. Maybe people still do this. I don't know, but I like how they were pitching this, and how they used and what they did with the trailer, this dummy trailer, to sort of be like, look, this is what this could be like. You can imagine this on the big screen, right?
Yeah,
like, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and it's a good cinematic way of showing what a film will be like. And I dare say it could teach trailers these days a thing or two as well.
Yes, because there's the less is more, and at the moment, for the past kind of 10-ish, 15 years, there's always been the big criticism that trailers give too much away, and then they do. They do. And or they intentionally lie, which I just find asinine. Like, I remember when Spider-Man No Way Home came out, and you have Tom Holland's Spider-Man swinging towards 3 different villains, and it's like, but none of them are like in the right alignment. So it's like, okay, you've blatantly erased the other 2 actors who are in this scene. Because at one point the lizard head, his face just gets kicked. And like, okay, yeah, it's because something's meant to kick him, and it's Spider-Man, but it's not that one, because the one that's on screen is 70 feet below him. Like, it's Marvel is notorious for doing this, and I don't like the lying trailers. I don't like the lying trailers. It pisses me off.
No, there's another Spider-Man trailer that does something similar, isn't there? Where it's one of the best shots in the film. Is it the second Andrew Garfield one? And you wait 2.5 hours, whatever the hell that film is, for that shot, and it comes just before the credits. And it's he's swinging the manhole cover.
Yes, well, that's another good example of a terrible. And hey, we should just mention now that Amy Pascal, the producer of these Spider-Man films that are fucking dog shit, is one of the 2 people in charge of James Bond moving forward to Amazon. And I'm just like, and then the other one is what's his name? It's the guy who did the Harry Potter films. I'm just like, wow, could you find 2 totally unqualified people to just like did anyone ever watch any of these Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films, and these Tom Holland ones, or any of these like Venom movies? They're terrible. Like, terrible.
Absolutely.
So what are you doing? So I'm getting off on a Bond tangent, which I don't need to be.
It doesn't bode well, but
no,
time will tell. But it doesn't look good.
But to bring it back to bad trailers and stuff, like that Spider-Man movie you mentioned actually had a ton of footage in the trailer that was never in the film. They had like subplots that were set up in the trailer that were ejected entirely from the film. And you're like, okay. And again, I'm like, okay, these are the people you want to do your Bond movie? Oh, okay.
Yeah, quite. Well, what can you say?
Sure. So anyway, dummy trailer is, trailer. I like this dummy trailer. And it's good stuff. And it was filmed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who is the director of the Addams Family movies and also the Men in Black trilogy, which I thought was pretty cool.
He also does Wild Wild West, but Everyone
gonna
has a
move
bad
on.
day at the office.
Yes. Wild West. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So they got their investors, which I thought was good. The filming of it, it took about a year, I guess, to get the money. But once they got the money, they cracked on, and this was a fast shoot, really
Yeah,
fast.
very.
They did this thing in like what was like 8 weeks or something.
8 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that is really good.
Yeah, yeah. But again, I mean, do you think that's partly because they're writing it and directing it, albeit not necessarily credited as so, but
Mm,
so they know what they want, don't they? They know what they need to get out
mm,
of the actors. They know what shots they want
yeah.
because they've already, we've said it before about people that have got a vision and they have creative control over it and they do it.
Yes.
I think is this another example of that? Do you think?
I mean, maybe. I think there was a clear vision and a clear path that they were following for this
Mm,
film, and I think that is helpful. And I think this is where you get to the problem of how many times do films go into production when the script isn't finished,
yeah,
and then it's often incredibly bloated. And I'm like, this was a very, very pared down film. This
mm,
was a couple of locations. This was like Ray's house, Abby's new apartment, and that bar. And more or less everything else takes place outside
yeah.
in really cool open environments, but all very like effective but simple. And 1.5 million isn't anything to shrug at even today, but it's not a huge budget.
It's not massive. It's not
And
massive.
I think they used the budget accordingly, and it probably mostly to the cast and crew
Yeah.
than anything else. But there was something charmingly simple about this whole film. And I mean that in a very positive way. So if the Coen brothers ever listen to this, lol, I don't mean that as a derogatory. Walter Mosley once said that like he tries to write pedestrian and in a way that comes across as pedestrian, meaning it's the language of the people. It's
Yeah.
not trying to be lofty and over the top and preachy. And that's sort of what I got. That's what I mean by sort of this simpleness and effectiveness of this is it's not trying to be something like, potentially like a Nolan film that is trying to be lofty, but maybe isn't as lofty as it really
As it
thinks it
thinks it
is.
is. Yeah, absolutely. This is I mean, the impression I got was this is a film that wanted to tell a story and tell it well, and essentially that was it. So it doesn't
Mm,
need any sort of fat on its bones. It doesn't
mm,
need any sort of smart suits. It just needs to be told and
yes.
told in the best way that these men can tell it. And that's
Yeah.
what you get. That's what you get. They
Yes.
get 100% out of their actors,
Oh my
of
god,
of
yes.
which of which there are
Don't.
only really four, aren't there? I mean,
There's 4. Like there was 4 fish that he catches.
yeah, yeah, four.
And I'm like, there's
Very
some
good.
sort of symbolism there
Yeah,
that I'm not sure what that is because
yeah.
they don't all die, but
No,
3 of them do.
three do. Three do.
Uh, but it is, everyone's sort of caught on hooks, I guess.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, and that's a good noir theme, isn't it?
yes.
We're all
Yes.
we're all
Yes.
caught on fate's hook.
Yes.
The
And
old
uh,
King Lear thing of
yeah.
flies to one some boys, whatever the quote is, to the gods.
Yeah. And of course, this was also Frances McDormand's screen debut, and I have to say,
Yeah,
she's electric in this. My God,
she's brilliant in this. My
you know,
God, yeah,
she's very, very, very good.
and she's brilliant in Fargo as well.
Yes,
But as a sort of as a debut, this is no wonder she's had the career she's had. And
yes,
it wasn't originally her, was it?
mm,
Um, it was originally Holly Hunter,
yes,
but she either couldn't go or was she have another job or something, and they were
yeah,
roommates, and she said you should go.
yes,
Frances McDormand goes, and one of those examples of casting where you just cannot imagine anybody else in the role.
yes. No, she was perfect in this.
She's
So
absolutely brilliant in it.
they finished the film and they brought it back to LA, and all the studios were like, nah,
As so often
we
happens.
we don't want this. We don't want this. But then later it was accepted into the New York Film Festival in 1984, and also shown at the Toronto Film Festival, and that's where they made a deal with Circle Films to distribute the movie domestically. So I don't know if this had an international release. My guess is no. I'm assuming it didn't have an international release, but there we go. Like so many good films, the big studio's like, nah,
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you can, I can see it. It's not, this is 1984. What's out at that time? I
Well, we've
guess
got
there's probably
Indiana
a
Jones
super
and the Temple of Doom.
Indiana Jones. There's probably another Jaws movie. Back to the Future's coming out in a
Yeah.
year. It's they. Yeah, they're like this. They're probably thinking, what ET's probably been out by now. I don't know. They're
E.T.
probably
was
just
out by
thinking,
now. Superman 3's just been out.
yeah,
Return of the Jedi has just been out.
yes,
We're into the. We're not unlike how we are now,
I know, right?
Really, just like history repeating itself. So
yes,
that, there's things like endless Marvel movies can get made, but something like Strange Darling, just sort of you're lucky if you get to see it.
Yes. Which shout out to JT Molnar for retweeting our Strange
Absolutely,
Darling episode.
Thank
You,
you very
sir.
much. Thank
We
you.
love that film. We love that
It was
film.
brilliant.
5 Falcons.
It was, yeah, from both of us.
So
So I think this is the sort of to continue that theme. This potentially the Strange Darling of its day. One of those films that should have been seen but probably wasn't because it was drowned under a load of blockbuster nonsense.
I mean, maybe possibly. I mean, there's other films of this genre that definitely came out around this time that maybe deserved a bit more attention, possibly. But but what I appreciate is that there were investors who took a risk on it, because investors today probably wouldn't take a risk on something like this as frequently, because it's not a popular IP and shit like that. But also the fact that it was. This was made at a time when it was possible for studios to allow certain films to have a modest box office return, because their films like their Jaws or their Indiana Joneses or their Star Wars are making them so much money that it can help offset the costs of these films that don't make that same return.
It doesn't matter if it fails. Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that we have completely and utterly lost in our modern era.
Totally.
Of filmmaking, and it's and I therefore I appreciate certain studios, like I do appreciate Apple, who are generally producing stuff that I'm like, man, I'm surprised you are doing this, because this seems like against the grain, to produce something like Sugar or Severance or Shrinking or it's like you're doing what we used to do back in the day, but it's like they're like the only people that I'm kind of seeing doing this. And then you have these indies like Strange Darling that are pushing really hard and fighting really hard
for themselves
to be seen. To get put in theaters.
And a famous example of that, because I was watching a documentary not so long ago, a couple of days ago, about the whole Bond thing. But and they interviewed one of the studio heads, and after Lazenby's film, this head said, "We've got to get Connery back, come what may."
Yeah,
for Diamonds Are Forever, this would be. And he says that he makes the point you just made. He says, "Tell him that if he does Diamonds Are Forever, I will finance and distribute 2 films of his choice."
Yes,
I don't care what they are.
One for me. Yep.
Yeah, I don't care what they are. But we will do them, because he said it didn't matter if it bombed, because Connery back as Bond would recoup anything that film would make or lose.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, true.
It's true. It's true.
But also,
we don't have that anymore.
Honest,
Yeah.
And it's a way of getting him to do it. So, and I think one of the films he made then was The Offense, which is absolutely brilliant. But anyway. So that's a practical example of what you've just been saying in a very famous one.
So, despite the critics really loving this film, in the early 2000s, the Coen Brothers basically said they think it's their worst film.
Yeah.
Ethan Coen called it crude. There's no getting around it. And Joel Coen said, I think it's pretty damn bad. And
I disagree with
from
both those.
I disagree. What I can relate to is you looking back at your early work compared to where you go afterwards and
Absolutely, and we
thinking,
all do that.
okay, yeah, so you kind of, I can see kind of looking at something like, that wasn't my best, despite people loving it, but you can look back at it and be like, I could have done that better, but this is all done in hindsight.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've got to be honest with yourself and say this won't be this first book, film, whatever it is, won't be the best because it's not who I am now. But it was the best I could do at the time. I think you've got to be fair on yourself,
Yeah.
It's because you learn from your mistakes. You learn with each new project that you work on. You learn something. No one stops learning. And I think for a first time, and it is a first time round for them. It's bloody accomplished this. I don't care what anyone says. I appreciate they may do things differently now. They may do different shots. It might be maybe a tighter script. It might be a bit more complex or whatever. But that's life. This is what it is, and it stands, and it stands as a good testament to an exceptional career. So
it's better than Manhunter.
Yeah. Although it has got this. I did have similar 80s vibes.
I mean, I didn't have
not as many. I
mean,
but
it has 80s vibes because it is 80s, but Manhunter had like obnoxious pop 80s that like never really took off. Like it was, it was like woo.
The most 80s I felt was when the other barman guy is he called
Maurice?
Yeah.
He's
sort of dancing on the bar in white chinos and white basketball.
Oh, and his Converse, his white Converse.
Yeah, his white Converse. That's the most 80s that it got. But whereas Manhunter was
that to me is like authentic 80s, whereas Manhunter's pop 80s was like, this is like manufactured 80s. This is not real 80s. It's just
even though it was.
It's like that scene. Well, it's like that scene in Beverly Hills Cop when he goes to the fashion designer. It's like that bit where it's like it's all over the top fashion that generally people do not engage with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's stupid. But yeah. Well, should we dive into the story a little bit? I mean, we've kind of been doing that on and off, but I think the some of the opening lines are just so great. When I think it's Emmet Walsh character says, what I know is Texas, and down here, you're on your own.
You're on your own. Yeah. What an opening.
Great line. Great opening line.
Great opening speech, I thought, really.
Yes.
And again, just like the conversation in the car, it sets up what you're gonna get. It sets up the world that you're about to enter. Yes. Because really, they are all on their own, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they're all out for themselves. But I just think that's a really good opening voiceover. And I have a love-hate relationship with voiceovers sometimes. But this is one where it works. This really is a good sort of gripping opening monologue that then takes you into that fabulous bit in the car, the fabulous bit of dialogue in the car.
Yes, yeah. And the car bit was great when Abby, they're so dark you can't really see Abby and you can't really see Ray, but she's like, he gave me a Pearl 38 for anniversary. I figured I'd leave him before I use it on him. Yeah. And what I love so much about that line is it really sets up Abby as what you think is going to be the femme fatale.
Yeah.
And they absolutely and utterly subvert what the femme fatale is, because she is essentially, in the end, she's anything but the femme fatale. She becomes the final girl in a horror movie.
In a horror movie.
And I love that. And I loved exploring her character because, when we get to that scene where Ray and Marty are talking and Marty's like, what, you think she's not going to leave you too? You think she's not going to cheat on you too? You know,
Yeah.
they really are pushing this sort of like, you can't trust her because she is the femme fatale. She is
She's
going
gonna
to
ruin
ruin
you.
you like
Yeah.
she's ruined me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man, I can't trust her, can't trust her, can't trust her. And then as this film plays out, it's like she is relatively innocent in everything, and
Yeah.
these lunatic men who are destroying their own lives for their
Well,
own greed.
she's a possession, isn't she, to Marty?
Yes.
She's nothing else but a possession.
Yes.
And you know, I was like you. I mean, and this is obviously intentional.
Mhm.
But I like you. I was thinking, right, well, they're setting her up quite early to be the femme fatale, so you've got to be on your guard. I was thinking Ray's going to be a sap. You know,
Mm.
it's going to be she's going to coerce him into killing Marty and all the rest of it. And it just goes to show you shouldn't take a film for granted when you think you know this sort of film. You shouldn't take it for granted.
No.
And I
No.
really started to think, wow, we'll get onto it later, but when Marty goes after her,
Mhm.
and she's alone in the house. I mean,
No, we can talk about that now. That is a terrific horror moment.
that's a brilliant
Terrific.
horror moment. Brilliant horror moment. He tries to abduct her,
Yes.
and you know, it's a jump scare.
It's a
Pretty
jump
much,
scare that works because it
it
is
works.
so terrifying, and it's also a scene where like the music plays so well into this. So the music is done by Carter Brewell, who did a lot of stuff with the
With the
Coen
Coens, yeah,
Brothers, and this was his kind of first big one. But they have this. That track is called the Monkey Chant, and it's based off some sort of chant in Bali, some sort of religious chant, I think. That also really reminded me of the chant in The Dark Knight Rises.
yeah. Me too.
And I thought I couldn't find anywhere that Nolan might have been influenced by this, but I thought this feels very much like that. So I wonder if there's a connection there. But I mean, that whole scene where he just comes up, grabs her by the mouth, drags her out of the
Drags
house,
by
and you're
now,
like, oh
drags
my
around the
god,
house.
he's gonna kill her, he's gonna kill her, he's gonna kill her, or
Well,
something.
I was thinking he's gonna rape you. He's gonna claim you back by raping you,
Yes,
and then
yes,
maybe
yes,
kill
yes.
you
Let's
after.
not
And
use the R word. Jesus. Fuck
well,
me. No, you gotta say the R word. Christ. We're gonna get penalized on one of our distributing channels.
well, edit me out then. Edit me out, and I'll start again.
Can't. Yeah, don't use that word. We can't use that.
Well, you know what I mean. That's what I thought was going to happen, and I really thinking Jesus. And when she's going for the gun and she can't get it, and you think
Yeah,
this is
jeez.
really, really tense and terrifying
Very.
stuff,
Yes.
and it makes me think. And like we are in horror movie territory here, and
Mm,
he is the sort of slasher, in all but act, I suppose.
mm,
And you think this is a far cry from that first scene in the car.
mm.
When she's saying, "I'll use it on him," and he's saying you can't trust her and all the rest of it. That was the turning point for one of them for me. And you think this is going to be something that you don't quite expect to happen.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
isn't going to go
and
the way you think it's going to go.
no, because I mean, even when she gets the upper hand and she kicks him very hard in the balls, and he's vomiting, and
Yeah,
then Ray comes out with the gun. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be the moment. He's gonna shoot him now. He's going to
yeah,
shoot him.
yeah.
And then he doesn't. He, the threat is there, but he doesn't. And then, but that whole scene continues to be tense because then Marty gets in his car and he drives away, but
I
it's a
love
dead
this
end.
bit.
So he
I
has
love
to
this
drive
bit.
back.
Yeah,
And I'm
I
like,
love that.
oh my god, he's because at that moment she's holding Ray and she's hugging him, and so her back is turned to the street. And oh my god, he's going to shoot. He's now going to
Yeah,
shoot them, and she's going to
yeah,
die.
yeah.
So this is it's a great. This Coen Brothers are trashing this film, but I think that is a really good scene of like
It's a
you
brilliant
don't know
sequence.
what's going to happen,
Yeah, it's
and
a
I
brilliant
loved that.
sequence.
I loved
It's a
it.
brilliant sequence, and it's a nice little payoff that Ray makes a joke of it. And he
Yeah,
says, I'd love to have seen his face when he realized it was a dead end."
yeah,
Because he's now got to drive back and see it all again.
yes,
It's just a
yeah,
beautiful little sort of punctuation mark at the end of a brilliant sequence that really turns the film on its head for me.
yes. And so it's sort of after this point where you know, Mike and Ray have another conversation, because he wants his money, and he's like, you know, I'm not going to give it to you, and if you ever come back here, I'm going to shoot you. But then at this point, Ray goes and finds the PI, and
Yeah.
he finds the PI at this, like, because M Emmet Walsh is, I don't know how old he is in this film. He looks about 50 or 60, but he might not be. But he's just a big, greasy, sweaty man.
He,
And
he's
he's hanging
50.
out at this. He's 50. Okay, and
He's 50.
he's a big guy. He's overweight and stuff like that. And they emphasize that sort of, you know, greasiness of him. And he's hanging out at this, like, spot where, like, young kids, like teenagers, hang out to, like, do drugs and get off and stuff. I'm just like, and they find him talking to some young girl. I'm like, what is she doing talking to him? And he is so gross by talking to her. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
I told you sleazy would be a word that comes up frequently, because this
yes,
is Walsh at his sleaziest, and he's very
yes,
good at playing sleazy characters. But
yes,
you know, the constant sweating, and
yes,
there's a bit where the sort of flies buzzing around his head, you know, and just like
yes.
really filthy.
Yes.
And
Well, it happens multiple times, the fly stuff. It happens here in the car because him and Ray, or him and Marty, sit in the car,
yeah,
and there's a fly buzzing around, and it, like, lands on his face a couple of times. And then later on, when the PI is in Marty's office, there's another fly, and it's just, to me, it's just symbolizing that he's shit.
yeah, absolutely
Flies are
flies around.
swarming around him
Yeah,
because he is feces. He is
he is
disgusting.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
You know.
but also on on a more sort of simplistic level, it's hot, it's sweaty, and
Yeah.
flies buzz around. So
Yes.
it's sort of doing a double function. But yeah, absolutely, he's a horrendous man. He's horrendous. But
Yes.
but as a private eye that is, um, people will think private eyes are Marlowe, they're Bogart, they're whoever. But this is what a sleazy private eye is. This is exactly what the cops in noir think private eyes do.
Yes. Yes.
Anything for a buck. What is it? Somebody says to Philip Marlowe, "You're a slot machine," don't they?
Yes.
At one point, is it Marlowe? I'm sure it is.
Can't remember. I
And
think so.
and this bloke is do anything for
He
cash.
Yes. Because it's funny, because in this car scene, which I love just the way this scene feels. It feels so, the air feels so dense,
Yep,
and you just know that car stinks.
stinks. Yeah,
It smells like BO and ass and probably moldy cheese. Like, you just know that is what this thing smells like. And
yeah, absolutely.
you learn that he has no morals, because at first he's like, well, you know, do whatever you want as long as it's not illegal. And he's like, and then he's like, oh, you what? He clocks on. Oh, you want me to kill him? Well, if the money's right, I'll do it. So, like, at one point, you do that classic line of, well, I won't do it if it's illegal, but almost in the same breath, you're like, but if you pay me. And then it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
who this guy is, and he's oddly obsessed with Russia. Both his opening monologue and in this scene, he mentions Russia
It
and how
does.
much money people make, and I'm like, what are you? Are you a communist? Are you
Yeah.
meant to be like,
What are you? Yeah.
you know?
I-
Yeah,
Is he a communist?
I don't know. What is
Is he
he?
a communist?
You know, it's hard to put a finger on what is his obsession with Russia, and you know, or is he just a nasty. I
I
feel like
think
he
he's.
probably votes Republican. He probably votes Reagan. You know.
Well, I certainly think he's on that side of the political fence for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I think he's just a sleazy, unpleasant oik, and
Yes.
who will just do anything. But clearly a man with some brains, because he says to Marty, "Well, how can I trust you?"
Mm.
And because I don't know that you won't do the dirty on me. And there's essentially, he says there's a witness there that needs tidying up,
Mm.
and he very quickly he gets a plan to double cross Marty.
Yeah. Yes.
very, very quickly. So he's not an idiot. He's not. He's
No.
just a sleaze.
Yes. Yes. The break-in scene where Marty breaks into not Marty, sorry, when the PI breaks into to Ray's house. Again, what a tense moment, because
Tense.
Abby's
Yeah,
already
yeah.
on edge. Abby's already on edge because Marty has already broken in and tried to abduct her. And then this guy, he breaks in and finds her gun in the bag, and it's all dark. And this is the other thing, like this again, this is kind of going back to Manhunter. I love some of the visuals of Manhunter. I miss I miss looking at night scenes that are well lit or interestingly lit.
Yeah.
And the dark blues, that kind of midnight blue that you get with these night scenes that you see in like things like the Terminator Judgment Day or something like that. And I miss that. I feel like too many times there was someone on Twitter a while ago who was saying, it was trying to defend the darkness of movies. Like, yeah, films are dark now, but it's for a reason. It's because they're trying to make it authentic. I'm like, I don't want authentic in this movie. I don't want to have to strain my eyes to see two people moving around in the dark.
Yeah.
Light it well, light it interestingly. Don't do this like it's trying to be authentic. Like I love that this film is mostly takes place at night, but it is the lighting is dynamic, and I appreciate it, and I really like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I love the. You're right that way, because they are still in silhouette, but you can tell what's going on,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
I don't care what, it's just as realistic, for goodness sake. It just means that I
Yes.
know that this is a film, this is a movie.
Yes.
So
Well, there's a famous line from Lord of the Rings where I can't remember which actor said it, but they're like, "Well, where's that light coming from?" And and they said, "Same place the music is coming from."
no,
It's like,
that's
yeah,
good. I like that. Yeah, I like
exactly. You don't think twice about the score.
that.
So
Yeah,
who cares where the light's coming from,
who
guys?
cares where the light's coming from? But you're right. That sort of blue uh, filter that they it's good. And the other night scenes, when they, certainly in the scene we'll talk about in a minute, where Ray has to do what Ray has to do
Yeah.
with Marty, that's lit brilliantly, that with street lights and gas station lights and
Yeah.
car headlamps and stuff. And when we talk about that scene, we'll talk a bit more about horror, because
Oh God, yes.
that to me is a horror. That's a scene from a horror film. No
Yes.
question about that.
Well, even this house scene where he's breaking in, because he breaks in, he knows that they're on the other side of that door, and you're like, is he just gonna go in and shoot them? And then he like ducks into the kitchen, and then he walks out the back door, and we're sort of following him from behind as he's walking around the house, and it
Yeah.
is just, it's tense because you don't know what these crazy people are going to do. So again, Coen Brothers, there's a lot of tension in these
A
scenes,
lot of
whether you
tension in
think
these
you did
scenes.
it well or not. It had that sort of Jason kind of child's play sort of level of horror of like, I am on edge because I don't know
Well,
what's going to happen next. And then when he like turns to the window and he sees them both lying in bed, and it's like, oh God,
yeah.
they're dead.
Walking around the house, silently walking around a house with murderous intent.
Yeah.
That's Michael Myers in Halloween when he's
Yeah,
done
Michael.
properly.
Yes.
When he's
Yes.
done properly,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
is about 2 movies.
Yeah.
That's Michael Myers, and
Yes.
and it's done extremely well. It's done as well as Carpenter does it in that first film. It's just
Yes.
that you might not necessarily make the connection because you think you're watching a crime film, but you're not. You're watching a crime film with massive horror overtones.
Yes. And then our first kind of really big twist happens, because essentially everything that's happened so far is really straightforward. We know who the characters are, we know what their motives are, we get it. And the PI comes to collect his money, and Marty slides it over the desk with his boot.
Yeah,
It's another sort of like, I'm not even going to use my hand. You're only worthy of my foot.
yeah,
And he's like, count it and go, and then bang. And I'm like, oh my God. He
yeah.
shoots and kills Marty with one good bullet to the chest, and
And it
pockets all the
lingers on him.
money.
The camera
Yes.
lingers on him
Yes.
for a long, long time.
Yes, because you kind of think he's going to move again, and that's what the PI thinks. He's waiting to see if he's actually
Yeah,
dead.
yeah.
And I'm just
Or
like,
does he have to do it again? Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh, jeez, that was a shocking moment. That was a true like. I did not see that coming.
No, I didn't see that.
Maybe I should have. I don't know, but I did not see that coming, and I thought that was a very good setup and payoff, and
Well,
something exactly what this private detective would do, because he is, as we have pointed out, he's desperate for money. He's all about the money. He is
yeah,
you know,
he's the same. He's cut from the same private eye cloth as the fella in Devil in a Blue Dress, the one who
the white. Oh yeah, the white guy. I can't remember his name.
the white
yes.
fellow who comes to see Easy Rawlins
Yes.
and gets him on the case. He's
Yes.
exactly the same as that fella.
Yes.
Although maybe not exactly the same, because he's worse. You know,
Yes.
this one is arguably worse. But you know, but shoot a man without compunction for the money. You know,
Yes.
so private eyes aren't always the hero in these sort of films, and when they're not, it's quite refreshing. You know,
Yes, because he is ultimately the monster. He is ultimately Michael Myers in this movie.
He is Michael Myers. Yeah,
He becomes the big bad that you're like, oh god, are they gonna get away?
Until Ray does, but we'll come on to that.
Until Ray, yes. Well, this is where it's great, because then basically that's the next scene is Ray comes into the bar, and he finds Marty dead, or what he thinks Marty. He thinks Marty is dead, and he finds Abby's gun on the ground. Now I did have a problem with this scene, because standing on the gun, I don't think would have made it fire.
No, that's a bit weak.
I once did something like that in a story, and I thought, no, actually, there's like safety features so that if a gun drops or something, it doesn't actually fire.
Yeah.
Because I thought, because it's such a cliche that happens sometimes. The gun drops, it goes off, blah blah blah. But it's actually one of those things where it's like, what's the knockout stuff they put over people's mouth?
Chloroform.
Chloroform doesn't actually work. It's the
it
same
takes
kind
10
of
minutes
principle.
to work, or whatever it is. Yeah. It would have been better if he picked it up and then heard something and fired it by accident. That, whatever.
Yes. Yes.
But again, going back to what you said earlier about these are people who act in a way that these people would act in these circumstances.
Yes.
He draws the conclusion that he's expected to draw. That is that she's done it.
Yeah, it makes sense that he would think
makes
that.
Perfect
sense. What is
so,
he going to do now?
And his instinct is to protect her.
Yes. Yeah.
And
he does. He tries his best. He drags Marty to his car, and he drives out to the middle of nowhere, where his intention is to bury the body. And I'm like, wow, okay, interesting. And this is the drive scene, and the burying scene is a very long segment of the film. It's about like 13 minutes long, I think. It's a very huge chunk.
Yeah.
No dialogue at all.
Apart from the radio.
Apart from the radio, no character dialogue.
Which I loved. I have to say, I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah,
because he's no one to talk to, has he? There's nothing for him to say. He knows what he's got to do. He's got to do it.
Yeah, it built the tension up wonderfully, I thought. And in that moment where he hears the noise, and you're like, is it just the body making a noise? As in, or is it actually him? And he pulls over and he runs out of the car, just scared shitless.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, this is nuts. And then of course, this is where things get crazy, because he walks back to the car, and Marty is alive, and he's crawling out. And
And then
again,
this is where it switches to horror for me, because it's the sound of the shovel on the tarmac.
Yes. Well, first there's the moment where it's like, is he just gonna run him over? Because he gets back in the car.
Oh, that's right. He gets back in the car,
backs up, and I thought, is he just gonna? First, I was like, are you gonna run him over? And then I'm like, but why would you do that? He's clearly going to die. Just leave him to die.
Just let him die.
And then he doesn't do that, and then he decides to go get the shovel in the back, and that, like you said, that scene, which is in the dummy trailer of it being dragged along the pavement.
That is Michael Myers, or another slasher character, who's already somehow managed to maim one of the sort of mid-level victims, who's trying to crawl away and escape, and they're just slowly and relentlessly coming after him with the knife in their hand. In this case, it's a shovel, and that scraping along the gravel is terrifying. It's absolutely because Marty doesn't look back. He can't look back because he's in absolute agony. So all he can do is hear the footsteps and that stone against metal.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and pitched perfectly because it's in total silence. That's the only sound. It's absolutely great. It's absolutely brilliant stuff.
But I do think as well, it's like when he goes to swing it and potentially bash him over the head, I also thought, why are you doing that?
Yeah, why are you doing this? Yeah, why are you
he's
doing
gonna
this?
die. Just let him die.
He doesn't know what to do, does he? He doesn't really know what he's gonna, because he's an ordinary man in extraordinary circumstances.
Yes.
So he doesn't really know what he's gonna do.
Yes.
And I think part of it is he thinks that'll be a good way out, but hasn't got the guts to do it.
I think so, yes. And then obviously he then digs the hole, and we watch him begin to bury this fucker alive.
Now the first thing that comes into my head when I saw that is Edgar Allan Poe and the premature burial. Poe had a lifelong fear of being buried alive, hence the story of the premature burial and things like the pit and the pendulum being bricked up and all that business. And again, you think this is a horrendous moment of horror, because I mean, for a start, he's really doing it. I mean, he's not giving Dan Hedaya like much slack to work with, is he? He's throwing it right in his face, and and he's screaming. He's dying agony, gasps of last life, but also screaming in fear.
Yes,
and that is a terrifying thing to do. And then I think to myself, if you've got the guts to do that, you had the guts to hit him pretty hard over the head, and after all, this is much colder.
Yes, like it was a very intense and unexpected moment, because you're just like, wow, you are going to some extreme lengths to do something you don't need to do at all.
Yeah,
and then goes back to Abby, and she's like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, I took care of it. Yeah. It's all done. You're safe now. We got to think about going away. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
And that's when it hits him. He's like, oh no.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crap.
Something's wrong. Yeah.
Yes.
But that whole it's about, is it 30 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that? One of my favorite bits in the whole film.
Yeah.
I thought that was masterfully done. So again, if the Coen Brothers are listening, that was brilliant.
Good stuff. It's very, very
Don't be
good
so hard on yourselves.
Of course, after this point, I'm kind of like, man, where is this film going to go? But of course, the PI is missing his lighter, which is underneath the pile of fish that are sitting in Marty's office, which connects him to the crime, because it connects him to the scene. And but then I guess he gets it in his head. He goes to the place and sees that Marty's gone, and he's like, oh shit. And I guess maybe I'm just a little bit cloudy on why he is going to kill Ray and Abby. Does he see something that makes him connect that? Or is he just cleaning up all ends that connect?
I think it's that. I think he's just clearing up anyone who might be a possible, because he doesn't know what Ray and Abby know, does he?
Yes.
And I think he's just clearing up after it, because if there's nobody left, there's no one to squeal on him.
Yes.
There's nobody to squeal
apart from Maurice, who would have known that this guy comes around quite a bit.
Apart from Maurice, Maurice just sort of disappears, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's kind of a superfluous character. It's a shame. He just sort of comes
when he's in it, he's quite good. I thought
he's good. He's wonderful. But
did spend some time thinking he's gonna come back, but he never does.
No.
And by the time we got to burying Marty alive, I didn't really care about him. I'd lost interest in Maurice.
Yeah, because he has like another couple of moments that after that scene, because there's Marty's left a voicemail on Maurice's phone and stuff, but it's sort of he just sort of thinks that Ray has stolen money and is like, you need to give it back, and then he goes away again, and we never see him.
never see him again.
Like, all right, okay, so that's if that's probably criticism that they would probably accept of this, that Maurice doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah. But the private eye burns these photos, doesn't he?
Yes. He's photoshopped these photos of making the couple Ray and Abby
Appear
look like
dead.
they've been dead.
Yeah.
So 1980s versions of Photoshop, whatever that is, he's
Whatever
made.
that
And,
was. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's a detail that's just sort of glossed over,
Mhm.
and all the better for it. We don't need to know what he's done. The fact
No,
is,
we
he's
don't
done
need
it.
to.
We don't need to do
No.
any of that. But Marty's substituted his employees must wash their hands sign for
Yeah.
one of the photos because one's missing.
Yes. Yes.
And so he goes to retrieve it, doesn't he? The PI goes to retrieve it.
Yes.
Now, does something happen? Does something happen then that
Yeah.
makes him think
Abby comes to and
Abby
visits the
comes?
place, so
So
he goes and he's hiding. Because he's hammering at the safe to get in, but
that's
he
right.
but he but he can't get in, and
So
Abby comes in, and
that's why he thinks he's got to get rid of her because she's
that could
there.
be. That could be.
She's
That
there.
could be. Yeah, and then yeah. So then I guess the kind of the rest of the film is there's a little bit more that kind of happens with Ray. There's a little bit of back and forth, but you have the nightmare scene where Abby is wakes up and she goes to the bathroom and hears someone walk in her flats and opens up her bathroom door, and it's Marty sitting there, and he's like, I love you, and she's like, no you don't, you're just saying that, and he's like, he's here to, he'll kill you too, and you're like, who,
Yeah.
like
And this
subconsciously she must know that
she
it's
must know.
someone. Yeah, she doesn't know who, but she knows that someone.
And this is the broken glass on the floor that I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
That Marty's sitting surrounded by shattered glass, which
Yes.
becomes important later on.
Yeah.
But you do get that
Ray,
nice bit with Ray saying, he can't sleep and he can't eat. So the guilt is getting to him, which again is a nice bit of character touch, that he's an ordinary man.
Yes.
He's not used to doing any of this stuff. Fate's got in the way. Noir fate has got in the way, and he's been in the position that no one would ever dream they would ever be in, and he's dealing with the consequences of it. He's dealing with it, and suffering for it, which all too often isn't the case, unfortunately, in lesser crime fiction.
Yeah, I do like his sort of desperation that you get from the character of Ray for what he's feeling, for what he's done, and like he can't eat, he can't sleep, and he finally admits what he did to Abby in full, and she's also horrified by it.
Horrified by it, yeah.
Runs and goes to Maurice for a second, and then Maurice is gone. Maurice is gone again.
yeah.
But I guess we can talk about that kind of final scene where Abby goes back to her flat, which we mentioned have these two big arch windows, and Ray is there in the dark staring outside. And he, at the very beginning of the film, when they're driving, there's a VW Volkswagen Beetle following them and stops when they stop, and then drives around them and carries on. Mm-hmm. They see this car several times throughout the film, and the last time is Ray sees it outside the bar again. Yeah. And I think he's finally clocked it, that he's the suspicion that whoever is in this car is following them and maybe going to do something bad. So he is waiting at Abby's because he just has this notion that someone is watching them. And we get the opposite view, that sort of almost empty house Sherlock Holmes-y kind of thing, where the sniper's on the other side of the street, looking through the window. And
the woman in green again.
Woman in green, yes. Oh god. And
he's got all the lights off. Ray's got all the lights off so that the sniper can't see anything.
Yeah. Of course, she comes home and cracks on the lights, and I thought he would have been a bit more like, you need to turn the effing lights off now, lady. Like, come on. Because I will admit, with that last part, I was just waiting for him to get shot. I thought he is just going to get shot now. So a little bit of tension was maybe undercut with that moment, but then I guess there is still tension because you are waiting for it.
Yeah, but he doesn't even dive to the floor, does he? He walks into the middle of the room.
Yes. He can't really dive because he gets shot straight away.
He walks into the middle of the room and then gets shot, doesn't he?
Yes.
He's at the window. I mean, he could get to his knees at least. and say, turn off the
or
light,
just
turn
like
off the light, or
yeah,
do
like go
something.
to the other side of the along of the building where he's out of frame.
But yeah, but movie's got a movie, so it's got to
Movie's got a movie. Movie's got a movie.
it's got to get going.
Yes. So he's dead. He's down. She again doesn't turn the light off, which I'm like, why are you not turning the light off? Then she has to use her shoe to break the lights. And yeah, part of me is like, look, it's an intense situation. How fast are your reflexes? How fast are you thinking? Fine, I'll let it go. Let it go. But then again, we kind of get back to like proper Michael Myers horror
Well,
territory.
this becomes now
where,
a slasher film. This becomes an
yes,
out and out slasher film.
yes, because
And she is, as you said at the outset, she's now the final girl. She's not the femme fatale. She's now the final girl.
yeah, and the PI is coming in to take care of her and get her off the table. And she goes and hides in the bathroom, and you're just like, where are you gonna go? Like, it seems like I guess it's slightly an odd place to hide when you're in this whole building, and you could have gone anywhere in the building.
Yeah, this does annoy me. This because
Yes.
we were watching something else, a TV program, and somebody hid in some stables, and I said to my wife, "Well, there's nowhere for her to go now."
Mm,
She'd have been better off making it look as if she'd run into these stables and then gone in the opposite direction.
yes.
And so, of all the places to, why don't you just run back down the stairs? Why?
Yeah.
If you hide in a bathroom, there's only one way out.
Yes.
Or, well, two if you get out a window, but that's not really viable.
Yes.
So you're not in the best place to protect yourself, are you? Really?
No. You sort of put yourself in the trap, and I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. And she looks out the window.
It happens a lot.
Yes, it does. So she looks out the window. There's nowhere to go, and then he comes inside and he enters the bathroom, and she's gone. I was like, okay, well, she's clearly outside the window.
Yeah,
you kind of know that. You just don't know where she is outside the window. Is she hanging there or whatever. She's not hanging there, which is okay, cool. And I sort of didn't really think when the detective starts to he reaches his hand out and he starts to open the next window. There's apartments like, how did he? I don't know. It seemed it's a good bit of intuition, and he has been smart in the past. But I just sort of thought, man, I would not have probably have thought to reach around to see if that other window is open, or if I did slip out that way, I'd make sure to close it, or something, But it does lend itself to a very good scene, and that is when he puts his hand around. Because again, it's like, what are you reaching for? I guess, what are you reaching for, sir?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what he's reaching for.
If he was climbing out, fine. If he's climbing out to kind of like scale the building and get into the next window, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
I kind of get it. Maybe he doesn't get that far. Maybe that's his intention. I don't know. Maybe
it's not made clear, is it? It's not made abundantly clear.
No.
But things are happening so quickly that maybe they hope you'll gloss over it. I don't know, but it's not clear what his intention is.
Yes.
If indeed he's got any intention other than just sort of getting in.
Yes. Well, Chekhov's knife pays off in this moment. And when he reaches his hand over the sill, she stabs through the hand, binding him to the sill.
She
then
shuts the window and traps it there, and then
and it's
straight through,
brutal and violent, and he's it's just
screaming in agony. And this is the scene that's voted like top 100 scares in movie history, whatever it is that
I buy it. It's a great. It is once that bit happens, and you kind of eject the logic of it. It is a terrific scene. I do love that.
Yeah,
I love that moment, and it genuinely made me like, oh my god.
Yeah, and the scare comes from the whole situation, not just the act of violence. It's the whole situation. What is he going to do now? What's his plan now? He's skewered to a windowsill. What does he do? And what does she do? Does she now leg it, or does she kill him? Or what is going to happen?
Yes.
And it is tense. There's no denying this is tense.
Yeah. I mean, I did again, it's one of those moments where it's like, okay, what are you going to do now? Like, and I'm sort of like, okay, then you sort of, it falls a little bit into that, like, almost borderline cliche of like, why aren't you running? Why aren't you calling the cops? Why are you walking slowly back into your place? yes, you pick up your gun. You don't even know if there are bullets in your gun, lady.
No.
Like, you don't know if what's in your gun. You should probably check that because your gun has been used as a crime, for a crime already.
Yeah.
And then she just sort of walks into the place, walks across the room, and cowers down in a corner in the dark. And while it's like the setup is kind of fun in that one shot has been used to kill Marty, one shot has gone off accidentally, 3 more shots are used by Marty when he's being buried alive,
Yeah.
which doesn't really track because the
No.
3 shots should be in a row.
Yeah.
Bam, bam,
Yeah.
bam.
Yeah.
So bit of an issue there. I'll let it slide.
Well, and also, what happens if Ray doesn't accidentally stand on the gun? What if
Yeah,
Ray
well then there's
doesn't
another
actually?
bullet.
Yeah, what if Ray doesn't fire the gun? Then there's, the
Yeah.
3 bullets are meant to be the 3
Yeah.
that it's all a bit sort of, death on the Nile, where you think, would this really happen?
Yes. Exactly,
you're very lucky that this bullet's not been found in Death on the Nile, and you're very lucky that this gun went off when it shouldn't have done in this film. So,
Yeah.
but again, like you think, oh, I'll let it slide. These are things that occur to me after, because in the moment, I am.
No. And I don't know if those kind of like guns where you can spin the barrel-y thing, has that been moved? Could that have been spun?
Could it have been? Yeah, could it have been.
Maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's an explanation. People who are well versed in guns can tell us in the comments. So there could be an explanation for it, but it's just one of those moments you sort of think, okay, all right, well, I guess.
Yeah.
But because then it's like, well, man, if Marty just would have shot one more time, he would have succeeded.
Exactly.
Which I guess adds to the nihilism of everything. But anyway, so she's sitting there. The PI gets his hand free. He's looking nasty and gray and sweaty and gross, and
it's even more sweaty than he was in his car.
Oh gosh, yes, he is. It's so gross. And as he comes out, bang, she shoots him, and he dies. And she thinks it's
Well, he shoots through the wall, doesn't he, to free his hand? He shoots
punches
through the wall and punches through the wall.
Yes, yeah. So I'm assuming he's punching through the wall because he's trying to, or he's shooting through the wall to shoot her, hopefully, and then punching through the wall to get his hand free.
To get his hand, yeah.
And then gets that done, and then he dies, and he thinks she thinks that he's someone else, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Does she think he's Marty? Isn't that it?
Yeah, she says, "I'm not afraid of you, Marty."
Yeah, and I'm like, but Marty's dead.
Yeah.
So why'd you say Marty?
Yeah, I don't know.
That was another bit where I was like, wait a minute, wait. He's dead, so I don't know why you think this is Marty. This is clearly not Marty.
But it gives him a great final line.
Yes,
but
it does.
It is a bit odd.
Yes, because yes, there is the dream, but the dream and the coincidence of the dream having the glass in the right spot and all that kind of stuff, it's just sort of like, it's I don't know.
Well,
I don't know if it is as successful as and this is where it's like I can maybe sort of see where the Coen brothers are coming from, where they're like it's a bit, the film is a bit, whatever.
There are bits I think that they would now say, well, we should in another run through the script, perhaps.
Yeah, well, they called it crude. Ethan called it crude, and I'm like, maybe that's it. Joel called it pretty damn bad. It's not pretty damn bad, but maybe crude is the way to explain this, because it's a bit sort of, maybe that's a good way of explaining this.
Yeah, maybe. It doesn't quite work the way they thought it would work in 1984. I think that's but that's an experience thing. That's an experience.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, so there we are. Then we fade out
with a dripping tap or whatever it is.
Yes. And I'm like, I didn't understand the reason for the tap. I don't know what that was a reference to. Did I miss something? Did I forget something?
No. I think it's just draw your own conclusions, and I think it's is it not sort of like, well, it's just everything's sort of totally meaningless, really.
Yeah.
Dripping taps are just so what, but and everything that's happened has all been for nothing. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. I bet if you set a room full of film students down, 20 film students in a room, you'll get 20 different answers for that.
I'm sure if you sat a room of film students down, they'd say, "I've never seen this film."
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, okay,
You know,
fair enough.
they're
But
like, I was watching the Avenger movie.
yeah,
I'm being mean on film students. I'm sure.
Film critics, perhaps we should say film critics. Then. Although
I don't know if that's any better. I don't know if that's
might
any
apply.
better. I don't know if that's any better.
I think it's just a sort of, life drips on, as it were, and
Maybe.
none of this, in the big scheme of things, none of this really matters.
Maybe, maybe.
But
I
I don't think
appreciate that.
Do I
Abby
think
won,
it's necessary? No. Do I think that's another example of why it might be, why they might think as an ending it's crude? Yeah, I think so, because I think it would be a better final shot of if the camera just zoomed away from or panned away from Emmet Walsh and then just went to black. I don't think the tap adds anything. The dripping water doesn't add anything.
No.
So yeah, I suspect that could be, and I think if they remade it or did a proper director's cut, they might get rid of it. I don't know.
There was a Japanese remake in 2009.
There was, with a really weird. What's
Never
the title?
looked at it. I don't even remember. But I just know that there's a Japanese remake of this movie.
I think it's called A Man, a Girl, and a Noodle Shop or something like that.
Something like that. Something like that. Yeah.
I've never bothered.
No. So we have a patron question, which I think we've sort of answered throughout the course of this episode. But Garm1981 asks regarding Blood Simple, is M Emmet Walsh's character the sleaziest private dick in noir cinema, or do you think someone else is even worse? I don't think I've come across anyone worse than this one.
No. I don't think I've come across a sleazier one for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. There's ones that do morally gray things and will kill people and so on and so forth. But
there are
the level of sleaze that this private detective is on another level.
Yeah, and it's the word sleaze because there are unpleasant ones. I mean, Mike Hammer is unpleasant.
Yes,
but he's not necessarily sleazy.
No.
But this bloke is sleazy and filthy and obscene.
Yes,
and played brilliantly. Played brilliantly.
Yeah, and I remember, I do remember, Peter Weller, the guy who plays RoboCop. He played a PI. He played a sleazy PI in Dexter. One season of Dexter, and he was gross, he was sleazy, he was nasty. And when I think of people like you mentioned, like Mike Hammer and stuff, it's like, yeah, there are sleazy PIs out there, but I think this one probably takes the cake.
Yeah, I think this one takes the cake. And there's that one in The Firm. John Grisham's The Firm. He's pretty sleazy. He gets killed by the bloke who then goes and plays a serial killer in Saw. But he's pretty sleazy, but he's not a patch on this fella.
No,
at all.
Think so.
I think this is the sleaziest private eye, certainly that I can think of right now. And I don't remember thinking, well, he's not as bad as so and so. So
no.
My answer to the question is yes.
Yeah, I think so. It's a good question, but I think
it is a good question. Yeah, but I think it's a resounding yes.
Yes, yeah. It's interesting because the Coen brothers had trouble trying to get Emmet Walsh to pick his hat up off the ground during the climax of the movie.
Yeah.
And he gave them lots of different reasons as to why he should do it, why he shouldn't do it. And then at one point they just said, "Can you just humor us, please?" And I love his line where he's like,
I love his line.
Yeah, he's like, "I'm humoring you by doing this whole fucking movie."
I think
which
that is
I
one
just
of
thought was great.
The best responses I've ever read.
Yes, because he got paid in a weird way. He got paid per diem. He got paid every day, cash in hand.
Yeah, and I found a note.
Is dodgy as shit.
Yeah. And I found a note. I confess I didn't go back and watch the film to verify this. But apparently you can see the wadges of money in his pockets.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Now, if you can, I would say that's perfect for the character.
Yes. Oh God, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. With his nasty yellow suit.
His nasty yellow pants, yeah.
Ugh.
The
Disgusting.
man's vile.
Disgusting man. Disgusting man. Um, but I think I think we should rate this thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? As we do, we rate all of our films out of 5 Falcons, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Matt, what would you rate Blood
This is really
Simple?
I'm giving this a good solid 4.5. I think this is a really good one.
Mm.
It's not a 5 for me, but I think 4.5 is just about where I'd pitch it. For all the reasons that we talked about in the episode, for all in this discussion, I think the performances are brilliant. I think the script is tight. I think that the horror elements are really well done, and I'm a big horror fan as well. And it's shot beautifully all the way through.
I agree.
But yeah, I get a 4.5.
I agree. I for me, it's a solid 4. It's a 4 Falcon for me. It's great. It's good fun. It's well paced. Truly, some really fantastic horror moments, some really good character moments, and I just love the chaos. I love watching these desperate people do desperate things, and even though there's a couple of things that sort of stick out, to kind of like knock it down from a 5 to a 4, it's still 100% worth your time. So
Definitely.
go find it, go buy it, add it to your collection, because Blood Simple is a it's a gem. It's a gem of a 80s neo noir.
It is, and it's a good starting, like we said, a good starting point for the Coen Brothers' career. That they're too hard on it.
I think so. I think so. I mean, I kind of agree that when they call it crude, but with Joel calling it just pretty damn bad, I'm like, nah, it's not pretty damn bad. It's actually pretty damn entertaining.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
It is entertaining. It is entertaining. It has a sort of rough, even though it's an 80s film, it does have a sort of rough, like maybe 70s, like cheap 70s vibe to it.
Yeah.
Maybe. Almost like a pulpy 70s film in a way, but none of that takes away from the entertainment. That just sort of adds to its, that, again, like things like we talked about, Love Lies Bleeding and stuff. This just had a nice authentic feel to it. None of it was polished. It just felt like real everyday life for these people and these locations. And I appreciate films that take the effort to, and maybe this is a budgetary reason, they don't have the budget to make things look glossy, but I would rather watch this over something that's polished, like Michael Mann's Heat. Heresy? I like being a heretic.
Yes, absolutely. and it's, I don't think having a low budget is necessarily a bad thing. It causes people to be creative. It causes people to do things. It causes people to make films like economically. And you're right. This is watching people in their own lives. This is why Hitchcock calls cinema voyeuristic, because that's the feeling you get watching this film, that you are peering in and spying on these 4 people in a particular time in their lives, and it's all the better for it.
Yeah, I wholly agree. Well, I think we've thoroughly investigated this. I don't know if I don't have anything more to add. Do you?
I have no more to add. I think we've...
All right then. Well, we can wrap this puppy up. We can put it in the drawer, file it away, and say we have investigated in great detail Blood Simple. So we'll be back next week with another case. So make sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to take care walking down those mean streets. So we just want to give a quick shout out to our paying patrons. We have Steve from the Boxing Movie Podcast.
We have Garm 1981.
And we have Gregory Sandoval. They are our initial ground floor patrons. So if you want to join Mean Streets and become a patron and get access to cool perks, make sure you head over to our Patreon page and subscribe today for as low as $1 a month.